It was just another evening in my dorm room. My name is Aaron Holbrook, and I'm a sophomore studying computer science at college. The late nights are nothing new for me, especially with the looming deadlines for projects and research papers. That night I was researching for a cybersecurity assignment, clicking through links on obscure forums. Everything was quiet, too quiet, even for campus. The clock ticked past 1 a.m. when a link on a random forum thread caught my eye. Its title was bland, simple, even explore the unseen. I hesitated. I knew better than to go down rabbit holes on the dark web, but something about that link drew me in. A gut feeling warned me to leave it alone, yet my fingers hovered over the mouse, almost as if guided by something else. Before I realized it, I clicked. The browser window went black. Then, a forum appeared, a simple layout with one post displayed at the top, "Welcome Aaron." My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't entered my name anywhere. I didn't use my real credentials. This wasn't supposed to happen. I shook it off, telling myself it was just a coincidence, some algorithm mining data. But even as I convinced myself, a chill settled in the pit of my stomach, an instinctual warning that I had just crossed a line I shouldn't have. As I scrolled further down the forum, the unease only grew. At first glance, the topic seemed normal threads about technology, hacking tips, and bizarre conspiracy theories. But the deeper I went, the darker the conversations became. I stumbled across posts about people disappearing, strange experiments, and activities too horrifying to even describe. One thread stood out, glowing with an unsettling aura. Do you see them too? The messages inside were cryptic, talking about figures watching from the shadows. Users described how they first felt eyes on them after clicking a certain link. Then it escalated into sightings of shadowy figures following them everywhere. Just as I started to feel sick, my screen blinked, and a message popped up, "Aaron, they're watching you too." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I stared at the screen, trying to rationalize how it was happening. But there was no explanation, at least not one that made sense. The air in my room felt colder, heavier, like someone or something was standing just behind me. And my heart pounded in my ears as I slowly turned around, half expecting to see someone lurking in the darkness. Nothing. But the silence was deafening. After that night, the feeling of being watched never left me. Everywhere I went, it felt like there were eyes on me at the library, walking to class, even in the shower. My phone buzzed relentlessly, receiving messages from unknown numbers. Each message was worse than the last. A picture of me sitting in my room, one of me eating lunch, another of me walking alone at night. They were all recent, taken within the last few hours, impossible photos that no one should have been able to capture. I tried blocking the numbers, resetting my phone, even getting a new one. But the photos kept coming. The worst part, the photos started showing things I hadn't noticed, like dark, faceless figures standing in the background, watching. It wasn't just paranoia. I could feel them now, following me, always lingering in the corners of my vision. If I looked too long, they would vanish. But their presence felt heavy, suffocating. I was afraid to be alone, yet even in a crowd, the figures were always there, unseen by everyone but me. I stopped sleeping. The figures appeared in my dreams, standing at the foot of my bed, their outlines flickering in and out of focus. I would wake up drenched in sweat, heart racing, only to see them standing by my window in the real world. The more I tried to ignore them, the closer they came. I couldn't breathe without feeling their icy presence looming over me. I told my roommate Ben what was happening, but he brushed it off, thinking I was losing it from stress. "It's the dark web, man. You went too deep. Just log off. Forget about it," he said, as if it were that simple. I didn't dare tell him about the latest message I received. That morning, I woke to a new photo. This time, it was a close-up of my own face, taken while I was asleep, and beneath the photo was a single sentence, "Look closer." I zoomed in, and my blood ran cold. In the reflection of my eye, a figure stood in the doorway, inches from my bed, watching me sleep. I started seeing them everywhere across the street, in the windows of nearby buildings, even in the reflections of car windows. They were always there, blending into the shadows but unmistakably present. Desperation clawed at me, and I reached out to a professor in the cybersecurity department, hoping for some kind of logical explanation. But as soon as I mentioned the figures, the look on his face told me everything. "You shouldn't have clicked that link," he said, his voice almost a whisper. "Some places on the dark web aren't just about illegal activity, they're openings, doorways to things we don't fully understand. Once you step through, you can't come back." That was all he said before walking away, leaving me with more fear than before. The figures weren't just following me. They were part of something bigger, something that went beyond simple hacking or surveillance, something far darker. I had to stop this. My life was unraveling, sleep-deprived, paranoid, and on the edge of a breakdown. I spent the entire night destroying everything, my laptop, my phone, any device that had ever connected to that cursed link. I wiped everything clean, resetting my entire system and smashing the hardware for good measure. But deep down, I knew it wasn't enough. The figures didn't disappear. They didn't stop watching. And now they were closer than ever. I could feel them even when I closed my eyes, waiting, patient, as if knowing the end was near. Days passed, and things grew quieter. The messages stopped. The figures seemed to fade. I thought maybe, just maybe, I had severed the connection. But last night, something happened. I was lying in bed, half asleep, when I heard the soft click of my door opening. My heart froze, every muscle in my body stiff with fear. I didn't dare open my eyes, but I could feel it, the cold, oppressive presence standing right next to me. I heard breathing. Low, slow breaths that weren't mine. When I finally opened my eyes, I saw it, a shadow standing over me, faceless and featureless, yet more real than anything I'd ever experienced. And then it whispered, "You can't escape." The last glimpse, it's been weeks since that night. I haven't told anyone what I saw. I pretend everything is fine. But every time I'm alone, I feel them lingering in the edges of my vision, waiting for the moment I slip up. And sometimes, late at night, I can still hear the whisper, "You can't escape." I realize now that the link wasn't just a mistake, it was a door, one I should have never opened. It connected me to something beyond our world, some far terrifying than I ever could have imagined. And no matter how far I run, no matter what I destroy, they will always be there, watching. I've always been a seeker, a digger for truth in the murky corners of the world. As a journalist, I followed countless leads, but none as dark and mysterious as this. The tip came anonymously, an email devoid of any traceable markers. It contained a single link to the dark web and chilling words, "Watch the auction. Find the truth." Curiosity coursed through me like a jolt of electricity. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, and after a moment's hesitation, I took the plunge into the hidden world of the dark web. The site was as cryptic as I expected, layers of encryption, coded usernames, and an interface that seemed designed to hide more than it revealed. It was a stark contrast to the brightly lit rooms of my local newsroom. The absence of light in this digital realm felt palpable. I logged in using a burner account I had set up specifically for investigations like this. That my pulse quickened as I browsed through the content. Each listing more grotesque than the last, but one in particular caught my eye. So live auction was about to begin, and I felt compelled to witness it. My instincts had screamed at me to back away, but the journalist in me pushed forward, determined to uncover the truth. As the auction commenced, the screen flickered, revealing a dimly lit room. My blood turned cold. A woman, young, terrified, and bound to a chair, was the center of the spectacle. She looked around frantically, her eyes wide with fear and desperation. I felt my heart pound in my chest, almost drowning out the sinister murmurings of the bidders. The chat scrolled rapidly as masked bidders cast their offers like it was some sick game. Each comment felt like a knife cutting deeper into the reality of what I was witnessing. They spoke about her as if she were a piece of meat devoid of humanity. The weight of the horror settled heavily on my shoulders, and I struggled to take notes, ready to report this to the authority. This wasn't just a story. It was a crime against humanity. Then, one bidder caught my eye. No name, no avatar. Just a blank space, silently outbidding everyone with terrifying speed. My fingers trembled as I typed furiously, documenting every detail I could. The masked bidders continued to escalate their bids, their comments dripping with a disturbing casualness. I could almost feel the oppressive air of malevolence surrounding them, but the faceless bidder was different. Something about his presence sent a chill down my spine. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Without warning, my phone buzzed violently against the wooden desk, startling me from my reverie. I glanced down, my heart racing as I read the text, a private message directed at me. "Enjoying the show, Sophie?" I gasped, my pulse quickening. No one should know who I was, let alone my name. Panic set in as I glanced around my dimly lit apartment, half expecting someone to be standing behind me, watching with cold, calculating eyes. But I was alone, or so I thought. The faceless bidder's next move was even worse than the message. My phone buzzed again, another text. I opened it, only to be met with a photo of myself taken mere moments before I looked down. I felt the blood drain from my face as a cold sweat enveloped me. Whoever this was, they weren't just watching the auction, they were watching me. My sanctuary had become a cage, and I was its prey. For days, I felt the oppressive weight of dread as I navigated my life. Every step outside my apartment felt as if someone were watching from the shadows. I couldn't go to the police. How could I explain this without revealing my own involvement in the dark web? They would question me just as much as I hoped they would pursue the auction site. I needed to handle this on my own. The texts persisted, each one more disturbing than the last. Pictures of me at the grocery store, walking down the street, even snapshots taken through my window. I felt as if I were being hunted by a relentless predator, one who thrived on the fear they instilled in me. I was losing my grip on reality, struggling to differentiate between the safety of my home and the lurking danger outside. Desperate, I turned to online forums to gather information on the dark web, seeking any advice from those who had crossed its threshold. I learned about others who had encountered similar horrors, people who had been targeted, stalked, or worse. The stories chilled me to the bone, each one a reminder that I was not the first to fall into this abyss. It became clear that I needed to act, but the shadows were closing in, and I was running out of time. With no clear path forward, I decided to return to the dark web, driven by a mix of fear and resolve. I had to confront the faceless bidder, to expose him for what he was. I logged back into the auction site, my heart pounding as I typed a new message in the chat. What do you want from me? For a long moment, nothing happened. The world outside felt like a distant echo, consumed by the darkness surrounding me. Then a new message appeared. I want you to watch. You're a journalist, aren't you? Don't you want the story? The faceless bidder's words sent shivers down my spine, twisting my stomach into knots. He didn't want money or blackmail. He wanted me to be part of this grotesque game. Another live feed popped up, showing the same woman from before. But now, I gasped. A photo of me had been placed on the wall behind her, like a trophy among twisted keepsakes. You're next, Sophie, the chilling message read. My heart raced, panic flooding my senses. My surroundings faded away, leaving me in a world where the boundaries between victim and predator blurred. Fear can either paralyze you or push you to fight. I wasn't about to let this monster win. Fueled by desperation, I began to dig deeper, using every journalistic trick I knew to trace the bidder's location. It wasn't easy. He was using layers of encryption to mask his identity. Each failed attempt brought me closer to despair, but I refused to back down. Then, I found a small error in the bidder's coding. It was a minor slip, but it was enough for me to trace their location. Not to some far-off country as I had expected, but to a warehouse just a few miles from my apartment. My stomach twisted with a mix of dread and determination. I had to act, but could I face this darkness head-on? I didn't call the police. I couldn't risk anyone else being involved. Armed with my laptop and the evidence I had gathered, I made my way to the warehouse, a sense of purpose guiding my steps. The silence within was suffocating, every creak of the building echoing through my bones. I followed the faint hum of computers, feeling the air grow thicker with tension. There, at the center of the room, was a single monitor, and standing before it was the faceless bidder, a man with a ski mask, oblivious to my presence. With a surge of adrenaline, I tackled him, smashing the laptop against the floor. The auction went dead, the feed cutting off abruptly. He struggled beneath me, but I held on, using all the strength I had left to fight for my life. I could feel the weight of fear dissipating, replaced by a fierce determination to reclaim my narrative. The police arrived moments later, responding to the location I had provided through a hastily sent text. The man was apprehended, taken away in handcuffs as I collapsed against a nearby wall, shaking. He had been running multiple dark web auctions, trafficking people and terrorizing those who stumbled upon his operations. But even though he was behind bars, the damage had been done. The images, the fear, the feeling of always being watched, they never left me. After that night, I quit journalism. Some stories are too dark, too horrifying to chase. I wanted to forget, to return to a semblance of normality. But every now and then, as I sit in the silence of my home, I still get a text message with no name attached, no message. Just a photo of me, taken moments before I looked at my phone. And as the walls close in, I am reminded that the darkness never truly fades. It lingers in the corners of my mind, waiting for the right moment to strike. My name is Kyle Everhart, and I've always been captivated by the world of technology. Growing up, I was the kid who dismantled gadgets just to see how they worked, much to my parents' dismay. As I turned my passion into a career, I became a tech enthusiast, but my fascination often strayed into the darker corners of the internet. Late one night, while scrolling through a particularly obscure forum, I came across a thread that set my heart racing, a challenge promising substantial payouts for those who could complete a series of dark web hacking tasks. The allure was irresistible. I read about others who had tackled minor security breaches, showcasing their skills while lining their pockets with easy cash. But among the chatter lurked warnings of a final challenge, the legendary Red Room. The thought of facing such a daunting task sent shivers down my spine. But the promise of glory and money drowned out my instincts. Ignoring the lingering doubts, I clicked the link, drawn into a world that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. Setting up my burner account felt like donning a mask. I carefully crafted a username that was both untraceable and nondescript, blending in seamlessly with the shadows. The first few tasks were simple: defacing a minor website, extracting data from a poorly secured server. Each victory came with a rush of adrenaline that fueled my obsession. I meticulously documented my exploits, the thrill of each new challenge igniting my competitive spirit. But with each completed task, the pressure intensified. The chatter surrounding the Red Room grew more ominous. Tales of its dark secrets haunted the forum, stories of people disappearing, their identities erased from existence. Still, I brushed off the warnings. It's just another urban legend, I reassured myself. My curiosity outweighed my fear, and soon I found myself standing on the precipice of the unknown, ready to leap into the abyss. The moment I accessed the Red Room server, my heart plummeted. The screen was filled with live feeds of unsuspecting individuals in their homes, each oblivious to the sinister reality unfolding around them. My breath caught in my throat when I recognized a familiar face, my own. Panic surged through me, a cold sweat breaking out across my forehead. The realization that I was being watched sent chills racing down my spine, and I felt the walls closing in around me. Desperation clawed at my throat as I frantically searched for the connection, trying to understand how this was possible. The hacker's bravado I had embraced began to dissipate, replaced by a suffocating fear. "Shut it down, Kyle. You can do this," I whispered to myself, attempting to steady my trembling hands. But as I prepared to cut the connection, the lights in my apartment flickered ominously, plunging me into darkness. As the lights returned, the atmosphere shifted. Distorted voices began to emerge from my devices, the words melding into a dissonant chorus of taunts and threats. "Kyle, we see you." The chill creeping along my spine morphed into sheer terror. Was someone in my home? The shadows in my apartment felt alive, twisting and contorting as my reality warped into a nightmare. I scrambled for my phone, my heart racing as I disabled the camera on my laptop. Each time I tried to regain control, the power surged, lights dimming and brightening erratically. It was as if the devices had turned against me, their screens flickering with malicious intent. A cacophony of laughter erupted from my speakers, sending me reeling back. This was no longer just a game. It had become a twisted trap, and I was its prey. In my frantic state, I recalled the usernames of some fellow hackers I had interacted with online. Maybe they could help me trace the mastermind behind this madness. I reached out to them, my fingers flying across the keyboard as I typed a desperate message. Yet as I did, the lights flickered once more, plunging my apartment into darkness. When the power returned, a chilling voice echoed from my devices, "You shouldn't have come here, Kyle." It was then I understood this was a game, and I was trapped in it. Each keystroke was a beacon, drawing the attention of someone who relished in my fear. I had unwittingly entered a world where the boundaries of right and wrong blurred, where my digital skills could either save me or seal my fate. The hunt was on, and I had to find a way to escape. Desperation clawed at my insides as I crafted a plan. I feigned compliance, pretending to cooperate with the hackers' demands while working furiously behind the scenes to trace their digital footprint. I dove into the dark web, utilizing every resource at my disposal, every piece of knowledge I had accumulated over the years. With every passing moment, I felt the walls of my apartment close in, as if they were tightening their grip, squeezing the life out of me. It was a race against time. The distorted voices grew louder, echoing my fears back to me. That were watching Kyle, they taunted, but I couldn't falter. I was no longer the eager hacker seeking thrills. I was a man fighting for his life. That each attempt to uncover the truth became a battle against my own rising panic. I would not let them win. After hours of relentless searching, I finally traced the hacker's digital footprint to a location in the city. My heart raced as I prepared my trap. I hacked into the Red Room server again, this time using a decoy to mask my true intentions. The tension in the air was thick with uncertainty. I could feel the weight of my heart pounding in my chest as I set the trap, my hands shaking slightly as I navigated the complex code. When the mastermind finally appeared on the other end, they wore a mask that obscured their identity. Their voice was distorted, dripping with arrogance as they taunted me. But I was ready. I confronted them with everything I had discovered, revealing the traces I had secured. Their bravado faltered, and for a brief moment I saw fear flash across the masked face. In that moment of vulnerability, I seized my opportunity. I initiated the shutdown sequence for the Red Room, adrenaline surging through my veins. "You're finished," I declared, my voice steadier than I felt. The masked figure hesitated, their confidence unraveling as I pressed the button to sever the connection. The screen flickered, and the feeds went dark, leaving the mastermind isolated in their own trap. In a final desperate act, they lunged toward the screen, their image distorting as the server crashed. I took a breath, feeling the tension in my muscles begin to ease. I had survived, but the scars of this ordeal would linger. I had emerged victorious, yet the darkness of the experience clung to me like a shadow, a reminder of the fine line between curiosity and obsession. As dawn broke, I sat in my room, the sunlight streaming through the windows, illuminating the remnants of the nightmare that had unfolded. I had stared into the abyss, and it had stared back. The experience had changed me, teaching me that the allure of the dark web was not just about adventure or money. It was about power, control, and the sinister forces that lurked within. Determined to reclaim my life, I decided to use my skills for good. I began documenting my experience, sharing it through various platforms to warn others about the dangers of the dark web. I wanted to ensure that no one else would be ensnared in the same web of deceit and terror that had nearly consumed me. With each story shared, I felt a sense of empowerment, knowing that I was turning my nightmare into a beacon of hope for others. As I closed my laptop, I glanced at my reflection in the screen, a reminder of the man I had become. I was no longer just a tech enthusiast, I was a survivor, determined to shed light on the shadows of the digital world. Though my journey was far from over, but I would face it head on, armed with knowledge and an unwavering resolve. And if you want to see more horror stories, please like the video, share your thoughts, and subscribe to our channel. Stay with us, thank you, and see you in the next videos.